In the crystal-clear waters off Oahu's legendary North Shore, where the world's best surfers chase perfect waves, what began as a routine dawn patrol session would become a nightmare that shattered Hawaii's surfing community forever. The morning of October 12, 2023, started like thousands before it, gentle trade winds, 6-foot sets rolling in from the northwest, and the first golden rays of sunlight painting the water in shades of turquoise and jade. Lani Brooks was 24 years old, a rising star in women's professional surfing who had just qualified for her first championship tour event. She had grown up on these waves, knew every reef break and current like the lines on her own hands. That morning, she paddled out at Pipeline with the same confidence she'd shown since she was 8 years old, duck diving under whitewater on a board almost as tall as she was. She had no idea that beneath the surface, 14-foot tiger shark was hunting in the exact spot where she planned to wait for the next set. This is Lani Brooks's story. A story of passion, the ocean's unpredictable nature, and the moment when paradise turned into horror in just 10 terrifying seconds. You're watching Animal Attack Chronicles, where we bring you the most shocking real-life animal encounters. If this story grips you, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon, because what you're about to witness will change how you see those pristine tropical waters forever. The 911 call came in at 6:47 a.m. There's been a shark attack. North Shore, Pipeline. A surfer, she's been pulled under. Oh God, there's so much blood in the water. The caller, fellow surfer Marcus Chin, could barely speak through his panic. He had witnessed something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. His friend Lani, who had been laughing and talking about breakfast plans just minutes earlier, suddenly yanked beneath the surface with such violence that her board snapped in half. Lani Brooks wasn't just another surfer trying to make it on the professional circuit. She was North Shore royalty, born and raised in a small plantation-style house just 3 blocks from Pipeline, where the sound of crashing waves served as her lullaby every night. Her father, Kai Brooks, had been a legendary big wave surfer in the 1990s, and her mother, Maria, ran a small surf school for local kids. Lani was practically born with saltwater in her veins. Born on July 15, 1999, in Honolulu, Lani grew up in a world where surfing wasn't just a sport, it was a way of life, a spiritual connection to the ocean that defined everything about who you were. Her first memory was sitting on her father's shoulders as he walked into the shore break at Sunset Beach, the foam tickling her tiny feet. By age 4, was standing up on a soft-top board in the whitewater. By 8, she was paddling out to the main break at Oahu, her sun-bleached hair streaming behind her like a banner of determination. Her childhood was a blur of dawn patrol sessions, after-school surf contests, and weekends spent camping on the beach with other surfing families. The Brooks home was always filled with sand, surf wax, and the constant rotation of boards being shaped, repaired, or waxed in the garage. Lani's younger brother, Keone, often joked that she loved her boards more than she loved him, and some days he might have been right. Friends described Lani as fearless in the water but surprisingly cautious on land. She was the girl who would paddle out in 10-foot surf without hesitation but was terrified of driving on the freeway. Makani Fernandez, who knew Lani since they were both Grom competitors at age 10, recalls a specific memory that captured her essence perfectly. We were at Rocky Point during a huge swell, had to be 12 feet easy, and everyone was hesitating. Lani just looked at me, grinned, and said, "The ocean's never gonna hurt us if we respect it." Then she paddled straight out and caught the wave of the day. That was Lani, total faith in the ocean. But it was Lani's unshakable belief in the ocean's benevolence that would ultimately lead her into danger. She had been raised with the Hawaiian principle of malama I kukai, care for the ocean, and it will care for you. She picked up trash on beach cleanups, never took more fish than she needed when diving, and always offered a silent prayer of gratitude before entering the water. In her mind, this reciprocal relationship with the sea was sacred and unbreakable. Her professional surfing career had exploded in the past 2 years. After winning the Triple Crown trials in 2021, she caught the attention of major sponsors. Rip Curl signed her to a 3-year deal, and she became the face of their women's line in Hawaii. Her Instagram following grew to 85,000 people who eagerly watched her daily posts of dawn patrol sessions and training clips. She had a unique style, powerful but graceful, attacking waves with a fluidity that made difficult maneuvers look effortless. The qualifying series had been grueling. Lani spent 8 months traveling to competitions in Australia, Indonesia, California, and Brazil, sleeping in hostels and cheap hotels, living off contest winnings and sponsor bonuses. But she never complained. Every competition was a step closer to her dream of surfing against the world's best on the championship tour. When she finally qualified at the contest in Portugal, she called her parents from the beach, crying tears of joy as the Atlantic waves crashed behind her. Her family was everything to her. Despite the travel demands of professional surfing, she always returned to the North Shore. Sunday dinners at the Brooks house were legendary fresh-caught fish, poi, and stories that lasted long into the Her father Kai, now 52 with knees that creaked from too many heavy wipeouts, lived vicariously through his daughter's success. He was her coach, mentor, and biggest cheerleader. Her mother Maria worried constantly but never let it show, understanding that asking Lani to stop surfing would be like asking her to stop breathing. 3 weeks before the attack, Lani had been featured on the cover of Surfer magazine with the headline, "The Future is Female." In the interview, she talked about her goals, winning a world title, of course, but also inspiring young Hawaiian girls to chase their dreams in the water. She volunteered at her mother's surf school every Tuesday, teaching 6-year-olds how to pop up, seeing her younger self in their determined faces. Her relationship with the ocean went beyond surfing. She was an accomplished freediver who could hold her breath for over 4 minutes, often diving down to explore the reefs and caverns that dotted the North Shore. She knew every turtle by its shell pattern, could predict where the schools of Humhumanukunukwapwe would be feeding, and often swam with the spinner dolphins that frequented the area. This intimate knowledge of the underwater world made her a better surfer. She could read the ocean's moods and movements in ways that amazed even veteran watermen. But those who knew Lani best would later say that her confidence had grown perhaps too strong. Tony, her brother, mentioned in a later interview, she started saying things like, "I'm more comfortable in the water than on land, and the ocean is my real home." It worried me sometimes. She'd surf alone at dawn when no one else was out, even when we'd had shark sightings. She'd just laugh and say the sharks were her family guardians. Tiger sharks are apex predators, perfectly evolved killing machines that have patrolled tropical waters for over 50 million years. In Hawaiian waters, they are known as nuhi, respected and feared in equal measure by ancient Polynesian cultures who understood their power. These sharks can grow up to 18 feet long and weigh over 1,400 pounds, with distinctive dark stripes that fade with age and teeth designed to cut through bone, shell, and flesh with equal efficiency. Unlike great whites that prefer cooler waters, tiger sharks thrive in the warm tropical seas around Hawaii, making them the most dangerous species in the islands. The tiger shark that would change Lani's life forever was a female, approximately 14 feet long and weighing close to 1,100 pounds. Marine biologists would later identify her from distinctive scarring on her dorsal fin. She had been tagged 3 years earlier as part of a University of Hawaii tracking study. Her tag designation was TH447, but researchers had nicknamed her Kona after the area where she was first tagged. She was what they called a mature resident, a shark that had established the North Shore as part of her regular hunting territory. Kona was first documented in Hawaii waters in October 2020, when she was caught and tagged off the Big Island's Kona. At that time, she measured 12 feet and showed signs of recent mating, with bite marks along her pectoral fins from aggressive male courtship. The satellite tag revealed fascinating data about her movements. She typically stayed in waters between 60 and 300 feet deep during the day, coming into shallower areas at dawn and dusk to hunt. Her range covered over 500 square miles, but she returned to certain areas with regularity, particularly the North Shore of Oahu during October and November. For 3 years, Kona had been a ghost in the data, a blip on researchers' computer screens that showed normal tiger shark behavior. She fed on sea turtles, monk seals when she could catch them, and large fish like ulua and ono. Her tracking data showed she had been in the pipeline area at least 40 times without incident. She was just another predator in an ocean full of them, playing her role in the marine ecosystem that had functioned for millennia. Lani's first encounter with sharks had come when she was just 12 years old. While surfing at Lani on a small day, a Galapagos shark had circled her board twice before disappearing. Instead of panic, she felt what she later described as electric curiosity. Her father had taught her that sharks were aumakua to some Hawaiian families, ancestral spirits that could take animal form. The Brooks family's ta'a was the pueo, the Hawaiian owl, but Lani had always felt a connection to the sharks as well. She would often see them while diving, whitetips sleeping in caves, sandbar sharks cruising the sandy bottoms, and occasionally the massive shadow of a tiger shark in the deeper channels. For 12 years after that first encounter, Lani surfed and dove in waters she knew contained sharks without a single negative interaction. She understood the statistics: more people died from falling coconuts than shark attacks in Hawaii. She knew the behavior patterns: avoid murky water after rain, don't surf at dawn or dusk when sharks fed most actively, never surf with open wounds. But she also believed, with the absolute conviction of youth and cultural upbringing, that her relationship with the ocean protected her. She would touch the water before paddling out and whisper, "Hiwela ku'o, I am just passing through." But experts were starting to notice troubling patterns in 2023. Dr. Carl Meyer, one of the world's leading tiger shark researchers at the Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology, had been tracking changes in shark behavior around Oahu. "We're seeing more daytime activity in shallow water," he would later explain in his deposition. Climate change, overfishing of their normal prey, and increased coastal development were all factors. The sharks were adapting, changing patterns that had been stable for decades. 3 months before the attack, there had been 2 non-fatal shark encounters on the North Shore. In July, a stand-up paddleboarder had been bumped hard enough to knock him off his board near Waimea Bay. In August, a spear fisherman had his catch stolen by what he described as the biggest tiger I've ever seen, less than a mile from pipeline. The lifeguards posted warnings. The local news ran their annual shark safety segments, but for most ocean users, it was background noise in paradise. Lani had actually seen Kona 2 weeks before the attack, though she didn't know it at the time. While filming content for her sponsors at Pipeline, she dove down to get an underwater angle of another surfer. In the footage, barely visible. In the blue distance, a large shadow passes through the frame. She posted the clip on Instagram with the caption, "So blessed to share these waters with all the sea life." Comments ranged from, "You're crazy girl," to, "That's why I don't surf." Lani responded to the worried messages with laughing emojis and, "They're more scared of us than we are of them." Dr. Meyer had actually warned about increased risk in an email to the Department of Land and Natural Resources on September 28, just 2 weeks before the attack. Satellite tag data shows multiple large tigers aggregating in the Hollywood pipeline corridor. This concentration is unusual for this time of year. Recommend increased surveillance and public warnings. The email was forwarded to various agencies but resulted in no immediate action beyond the standard yellow warning signs that were already posted at beach parks. Lani dismissed these concerns with the confidence of someone who had never experienced nature's indifference firsthand. When her friend Makani mentioned the recent sightings, Lani's response was typical of her mindset. "Mac, I've been in the water with sharks hundreds of times. They're just doing their thing. As long as we respect their space and don't act like prey, we're fine." The ocean's big enough for all of us. Warning signs intensified in the 48 hours before the attack. 2 separate fishermen reported large tiger sharks following their boats near pipeline, behavior that suggested the sharks were associating humans with food. The drone photographer captured footage of a large shark aggressively chasing a sea turtle in the exact spot where surfers regularly sat in the lineup. The footage was posted on local surf forums with heated debates about whether the beaches should be closed. Still, Lani refused to see the danger. The night before the attack, at a barbecue with fellow surfers, someone showed her the drone footage. Her response revealed the fatal flaw in her thinking. That's just nature, guys. The shark's gotta eat. It's not interested in us. Look how it's focused on the turtle. We're not on the menu. She went on to explain her theory that sharks could sense intention and energy, that if you entered the water with respect and aloha, you would receive the same in return. But Kona didn't know about respect or aloha. She knew only the ancient imperatives coded in her a hunt, feed, survive. And in the early morning hours of October 12th, as she patrolled the reef at Pipeline, her primitive brain was focused on one. In the weeks leading up to October 12th, changes in the ocean environment around Pipeline were becoming impossible to ignore. The water temperature had risen 2 degrees above normal for October, bringing bait fish closer to shore in massive schools. Local fishermen were having banner days, but with the bait fish came the predators. Lua ono and barracuda were hitting lures with unusual aggression. And following them up the food chain came the tigers. Lani noticed subtle changes but interpreted them through her lens of harmony with the ocean. On October 8th, while free-diving at Pipeline, she encountered a school of akule so dense she couldn't see through it. She posted a video with the caption, "The ocean is so alive right now. Mother Nature showing off." What she didn't mention was that 3 times during that dive, she felt the unmistakable sensation of being watched, that primal tingle that makes the hair on your neck stand up even underwater. Each time she spun around, there was nothing but blue. Dr. Carl Meyer returned to the North Shore on October 10th, just 2 days before the attack. His research team had been tracking unusual tag data from multiple sharks, including Kona. His report, filed with the Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology, stated, subject 447 displaying abnormal pattern adherence. Typically maintains 100-200 m depth during daylight hours, but recent data shows repeated ventures into sub-20 m depths between 0600 to 0800 hours. Coincides with peak surf traffic. Behavior suggests possible conditioning to human presence as non-threatening or potential feeding opportunity correlation. The scientific language obscured a terrifying reality. Kona was hunting in the surf lineup during the busiest hours, and she was getting comfortable with humans nearby. Neighbors of the Brooks family began expressing concerns. Auntie Mail, who had lived next door for 30 years and had watched Lani grow up, pulled Maria Brooks aside after church on October 9th. "I had a dream," she said, her voice heavy with worry. "I saw Lani in the water, and the water turned dark around her. The Aumakua were trying to warn her, but she couldn't hear them. Please, Maria, tell her to stay out of the ocean for a while." Maria, caught between respect for Hawaiian spiritual traditions and not wanting to frighten her daughter before a big competition, thanked Auntie Mail but said nothing to Lani. Lani's boyfriend, Jake Morrison, a photographer from California who had moved to Hawaii to be with her, tried a different approach. On October 11th, the night before the attack, he suggested they surf somewhere else. "Sunsets, firing, and it'll be less crowded," he argued. "Pipeline's been weird lately, all those sharks around, and the water's been murky." Lani's response revealed her state of mind. "Jake, I've been surfing Pipeline since before I could tie my own. I know every bubble, every boil, every mood of that break. If I was meant to get hurt out there, it would have happened already. Besides, I need to train where the contest will be. The CT event is in 6 weeks." But Lani had developed what psychologists call normalization of deviance. When warning signs appear gradually, people adjust their perception of risk rather than addressing the danger. Dr. Susan Hale, a sports psychologist who later analyzed the case, explained, elite athletes often develop a sense of invincibility, especially in their chosen environment. Ms. Brooks had surfed with sharks present hundreds of times without incident. Each safe session reinforced her belief that she had some special understanding or protection. It's the same phenomenon we see in free climbers who gradually take bigger risks, or race car drivers who push harder into dangerous conditions. Social media posts from October 11th show Lani in high spirits. She did a live Instagram session while waxing her boards. For the next morning's session, dawn patrol tomorrow. Supposed to be 4 to 6 feet and clean. Perfect for working. On my backside attack for the contest. Comments flooded in warning her about the recent sightings. Her response was telling, appreciate the concern, Ohana, but I trust my instincts out there. The ocean talks to you if you listen. Now, it's telling me we're going to have epic waves tomorrow. Her father, Kai, later admitted he had reservations that night. Something felt off. The dogs were restless, wouldn't settle down. The wind was switching directions every few minutes, what we call shark wind, because it stirs up the water and brings them in. I almost said something when she was loading her boards, but she was so excited about the swell. How do you tell your daughter to be afraid of the thing she loves most? The morning of October 12th started with an unsettling incident that should have been the final warning. At 5:45 a.m., as Lani was putting on her wetsuit in the pre-dawn darkness, a group of spinner dolphins that usually played in the bay suddenly fled the area, porpoising at high speed toward deeper water. Marcus Chin, who was waxing his board nearby, mentioned it to Lani. Oh, you see the dolphins? They booked it out of here like something was chasing them. Lani's interpretation was characteristically optimistic but tragically wrong. They're probably chasing a school of fish. More waves for us. She laughed, zipping up her spring suit and grabbing her favorite board, a 5 feet 10 inches high performance shortboard she'd named Lightning for the way it accelerated through turns. At 6:15 a.m., the first surfers began paddling out in the pre-dawn gray light. The conditions were exactly as forecasted. 4 to 6 foot sets with light offshore winds grooming the faces to perfection. The water was unusually warm and slightly murky from the stirred-up sand, visibility perhaps 15 feet instead of the usual crystal-clear 30. Perfect waves, but perfect hunting conditions too. Final witness accounts paint a picture of normalcy, masking approaching catastrophe. Kelly Slater's protege, John Florence, was in the water that morning and later testified, Lani was ripping. She must have caught 5 waves in the first 20 minutes, just absolutely charging. She was laughing, calling out encouragement to the younger kids. Class, Lani was stoked on life. The last thing she said to me was, Johnny, this is what we live for, yeah? Then she paddled back out to the impact zone. At 6:43 a.m., Lani sat up on her board to watch a set approach. Marcus Chun was sitting about 20 feet to her left. 2 Japanese tourists with waterproof cameras were floating inside, hoping to capture some shots of the local pros. A drone operator on the beach was filming the sunrise session for a surf website. Multiple angles would capture what happened next, though none of them would show the massive shadow rising from below until it was too late. Everything was about to change forever. In her final moments of innocence, Lani Brooks was exactly where she wanted to be, sitting in the lineup at her home break, waiting for the next set, living her dream as a professional surfer. The tiger shark known as Kona was 60 feet below, having tracked the vibrations of paddling and duck diving for the past 10 minutes. The ancient predator had identified a target silhouetted against the lightning sky, a shape that resembled her usual prey, isolated from the group, creating the electrical impulses and splashing movements that triggered millions of years of evolved hunting instinct. The stage was set for a collision between 2 apex performers in their element, one who believed the ocean loved her, and one who knew only hunger. Thursday, October 12, 2023, 6:43 a.m. The sky was painted in layers of coral pink and gold as dawn broke over Oahu's north shore. A light offshore breeze at 8 knots created texture on the water's surface, tiny ripples that caught the early light like scattered diamonds. The air temperature was a perfect 76 degrees, the water an inviting 79. A pipeline, known officially as Bonsai Pipeline, the first proper set of the morning was building on the horizon, dark blue lines stacking up as they felt the reef below. Lani Brooks sat on her white lightning board approximately 75 yards from shore, positioned at the main peak, where Pipeline's famous left-hand barrels would form. She had already caught 5 waves in the 28 minutes. Since paddling out, each ride building her confidence and rhythm. Her spring suit wetsuit was unzipped to the middle of her back, the morning air warm enough that she'd considered surfing in just her bikini. The water moved beneath her in gentle undulations, that hypnotic rhythm every surfer knows, the ocean's resting heartbeat between sets. The tiger shark designated Ditch 447, Kona, was positioned directly below at a depth of 65 feet, hovering in the zone where the reef shelf dropped into deeper water. She had been tracking the surface activity for the past 18 minutes, following the electromagnetic fields generated by muscle contractions and the pressure waves from paddling. In the previous hour, she had investigated 3 different surfers, approaching close enough to determine they weren't suitable prey before descending again. But something about this particular target had captured her attention, perhaps. The isolated position, the consistent movement pattern, or simply the accumulated hunger from 3 days without a substantial meal. At approximately 6:44 a.m., Lani began paddling to adjust her position for an approaching set. She stroked smoothly toward the horizon, wanting to be in the perfect spot when the waves arrived. Marcus Chen, sitting to her left, remembered the moment clearly. She was paddling out to meet the set, maybe 15 or 20 strokes. Super casual, not rushed. She was humming something. I think it was that Jack Johnson song she always liked. The sun had just cleared the mountains behind us, and I remember thinking how perfect everything was. Witness Jamie Nakamura was floating on his board approximately 40 feet inside of Lani's position. A visiting photographer from Japan, he had his waterproof camera ready, hoping to capture some shots of the local pros in action. His timestamp photos would later provide crucial evidence of the timeline. At 6 hours 44 minutes and 17 seconds, his photo shows Lani paddling, a smile visible on her face as she glanced back at an approaching wave. Kona began her ascent at 6 hours 44 minutes and 23 seconds, according to the later analysis of her tracking tag data. The shark rose at a 30-degree angle, accelerating from a near-stationary hover to 15 miles per hour in less than 3 seconds. Drove her 1,000-pound mass upward with shocking power, her mouth beginning to open at 40 feet, jaws hyperextending in preparation for the strike. Her attack approach was textbook tiger shark behavior, a fast vertical rush from below and behind, targeting the prey's blind spot. The first sign of trouble came at 6 hours 44 minutes and 31 seconds. Lani suddenly stopped paddling mid-stroke, her body going rigid. Multiple witnesses reported the same observation. She seemed to sense something, her head beginning to turn to look over her left shoulder. Kelly Thompson, a surf instructor watching from the beach, stated, "It was like she knew. Just for a split second, she started to turn. But there was no time." John Florence, positioned 50 feet to Lani's right, caught the movement in his peripheral vision. "I saw her board lift. Slightly, like when a wave passes under you. But there was no wave. Then I saw this massive dark shape beneath her, and my brain just couldn't process how big it was. I opened my mouth to yell, but it was already happening." At 6 hours 44 minutes and 33 seconds, Kona struck. The shark hit Lani's left side at approximately 12 miles per hour, her jaws closing on Lani's left hip and lower torso. The impact was so violent that Lani's board was launched completely out of the water, cartwheeling 15 feet through the air before landing upside down. The force of the strike drove both predator and Prey underwater in an explosion of whitewater that witnesses described as looking like a depth-charge detonation. Underwater, the violence continued. Kona's teeth, designed to saw through turtle shells and whale blubber, found. Purchase. The shark's powerful head shaking began immediately, the characteristic behavior that allows tiger sharks to remove large chunks from prey too big to swallow whole. Lani's years of breath-hold training kicked in instinctively. Even in shock, her body responded to being underwater by conserving oxygen. The first blood appeared at the surface at 6 hours 44 minutes and 38 seconds, 5 seconds after the initial strike. Marcus Chin, now paddling frantically toward the disturbance, described the horror. The water just turned red. Not like when you cut yourself on the reef, this was dark, spreading fast. I could see her yellow board logo through the blood. Then I saw her break the surface, reaching for something that wasn't there. Jamie Nakamura's camera captured the scene at 6 hours 44 minutes and 41 seconds. His photo, later used in the investigation, shows a massive area of disturbed water, blood visible spreading outward in tendrils, and what investigators would identify as part of Kona's dorsal fin breaking the surface. Nakamura was frozen in shock, his finger continuing to press the shutter button, automatically creating a horrific flipbook of tragedy. Beneath the surface, Lani fought with the desperate strength of someone who had spent their entire life in the ocean. Despite catastrophic injuries, she managed to strike the shark's sensitive gill area with her right elbow, a defensive technique her father had taught her years ago. Kona, responding to the pain, momentarily loosened her grip. Lani used this split second to break partially free, kicking with her right leg and clawing toward the surface. She broke through at 6 hours 44 minutes and 47 seconds, gasping for air. John Florence was already paddling toward her at maximum speed. Looked right at me, he would later testify, his voice breaking. Her eyes were so wide, but she wasn't screaming. Just said, John, just my name, like she was asking a question. Then the shark hit her again. The second strike came from below and behind, Kona adjusting her attack angle to target the lower extremities. The shark secured a grip on Lani's left leg above the knee. The predator's instinct was to drag prey to deeper water, away from the chaotic surface where escape was possible. Witnesses watched in horror as Lani was pulled under. Again, her arms still reaching toward the sky as she disappeared. Marcus Chin reached the blood-stained water at 6 hours 44 minutes and 55 seconds. I dove down immediately. I could see them below. The shark was so much bigger than I realized, maybe 14 feet. Lani was still fighting, hitting it with her fists. But she was getting weaker. I knew I had to do something, but I also knew if I went down there, we might both die. The surface erupted again at 6 hours 45 minutes and 3 seconds as Kona, perhaps disturbed by the increasing number of splashing surfers, approaching, released her grip momentarily. Lani surfaced 15 feet from her original position, her wetsuit torn completely away on the left side, massive trauma visible even from a distance. She managed one word, up, before the shark struck for the third time. This final attack was swift and decisive. Kona grabbed Lani around the torso and began the characteristic spiral descent that tiger sharks use to disorient and drown larger prey. They spun downward in a horrific ballet, leaving a corkscrew trail of blood in the water column. Marcus Chin dove repeatedly, trying to follow them down, but they descended beyond the range of his breath-hold abilities. At 6 hours 45 minutes and 18 seconds, Lani Brooks disappeared beneath the surface for the final time. The last image witnesses had was of her, blonde hair streaming in the water as she was pulled into the blue-black depths. Her board, snapped cleanly in half, floated in a spreading pool of red. The entire attack, from first strike to final submersion, had lasted 45 seconds. Then, at 6 hours 45 minutes and 47 seconds, approximately 100 yards from the attack site, Kona released what remained of her prey. The shark, her hunting instinct satisfied, descended toward deeper water. Her tracking tag would later show she moved 3 miles offshore within the next hour, resuming normal swimming patterns as if nothing had happened. For the apex predator, it had been a successful hunt, no different from thousands of others over her lifetime. The attack intensified with a violence that defied comprehension. Kona's initial strike had been devastating, her 3-inch serrated teeth designed by millions of years of evolution to saw through the toughest materials nature could provide. The impact drove Lani underwater with such force that witnesses described it as looking like she had been hit by an invisible freight train. Her board, a custom high-performance craft that had cost $3,000, snapped like a twig under the incredible pressure. Lani's mind processed the attack in fragments, the sudden darkness as she was pulled under, the crushing pressure around her midsection, the surreal sight of her own blood clouding the water around her. Years of ocean experience kicked in automatically. Even as her body went into shock, her hands moved to the shark's eyes and gills, the only vulnerable spots on a creature that was essentially a swimming fortress of muscle and cartilage. She managed to dig her thumb into Kona's left eye, causing the shark to thrash violently. Marcus Chen was now just 20 feet away, close enough to see the full horror of what was happening. The shark was shaking her like a dog with a toy, he would later tell investigators, his voice barely above a whisper. I could see Lani's face underwater, her eyes were open, and she was still fighting. She was punching and clawing, not giving up. The water was so red I couldn't see anything below their shoulders. The surface exploded as Kona adjusted her grip, her powerful tail driving both predator and prey upward. For a brief moment, witnesses saw a sight that would haunt their nightmares, Lani's upper body clear of the water, her arms reaching skyward, while the massive shark's head was clamped around her lower torso. Blood poured from catastrophic wounds, turning the morning's golden light into a scene from hell. Jamie Nakamura's camera captured this moment at 6 hours 44 minutes and 52 seconds. The image, too graphic for public release, shows the true size disparity between human and predator. Kona's head alone was nearly 3 feet wide, her black eye visible and emotionless, locked in the ancient focus of the hunt. Lani's face, caught in profile, showed not fear but fierce determination, the expression of someone who refused to surrender even in the face of certain death. John Florence had covered half the distance when the shark pulled Lani under for the second time. He made a split-second decision that would torment him forever. Instead of continuing directly toward the attack, he veered left to grab half of Lani's broken board. I thought maybe I could use it as a weapon, hit the shark with it, he explained later. But by the time I got there with it, she was already deep. All I could do was slam it on the water and scream. Underwater, a desperate battle continued. Lani, despite losing massive amounts of blood, managed to land several strikes to Kona's gill slits. The shark, responding to the irritation, began the death spiral, a behavior where tiger sharks rotate their entire body while maintaining their grip, disorienting prey and hastening drowning. They corkscrewed downward, Lani's long hair wrapping around both their bodies in a macabre dance. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a shark behavior expert who later analyzed the attack, explained what was happening beneath the surface. Tiger sharks are ambush predators, but they're also calculators. Once prey is secured, they often drag it to deeper water where they have the advantage. The spiral descent serves multiple purposes. It prevents escape to the surface, accelerates blood loss through centrifugal force, and exhausts the prey's oxygen reserves. It's brutally efficient. At 40 feet down, Lani managed one last desperate act. Using her free right leg, she kicked at Kona's snout with all her remaining strength. The blow, combined with the gill strikes, finally convinced the shark to temporarily release. Kicked for the surface with her one functioning leg, her left side a ruin of torn tissue and exposed bone. She breached it. 6 hours 45 minutes and 3 seconds, gasping a single word, help, that carried across the water with heartbreaking clarity. Kelly Thompson, watching from the beach through binoculars, saw what happened next. She reached toward Marcus, who was maybe 10 feet away. Their fingers almost touched. Then the water behind her bulged and the shark came up. Like a submarine surfacing. This time it grabbed her around the waist from behind. She didn't even have time to scream. The third strike was methodical and fatal. Kona, having adjusted her approach based on the prey's resistance, clamped down with maximum force. Her bite pressure, estimated at 3,000 pounds per square inch, crushed ribs and vital organs. Instantly. This time, she didn't shake or thrash, she simply pulled downward with inexorable power. Marcus Chin dove immediately, following them down. I could see them below me, getting smaller and darker. Lani had stopped fighting. Her arms were just floating, like she was surrendering. The shark was taking her straight down, no. Spinning, just down. I followed until my lungs burned, maybe 30 feet, but they just kept going deeper. 3 other surfers had now reached the impact zone. They dove repeatedly, duck diving through the blood-clouded water, searching desperately for any sign of Lani. Jake Morrison, who had been watching from shore, was paddling out, frantically on a rescue board, screaming Lani's name. The ocean, disturbed by all the activity, began to settle, the blood diffusing into pink clouds that drifted with the current. At 6 hours 45 minutes and 47 seconds, approximately 100 yards northwest of the attack site, a disturbance at the surface caught everyone's attention. Kona had released what remained of her prey in deeper water, her feeding instinct satisfied. Surfaced was no longer recognizable as the vibrant young woman who had paddled out 45 minutes earlier. Marcus Chen and John Florence reached the remains simultaneously, both men breaking down as they realized the full extent of the damage. The attack's sheer violence was almost unprecedented in Hawaii's recorded history. Dr. Martinez's analysis revealed that Kona had exhibited surplus-killing behavior, inflicting far more damage than necessary for feeding. This wasn't just predation, she explained. The repeated strikes, the severity of trauma. This suggests the shark may have been responding to environmental stressors, territorial imperatives, or elevated aggression levels we don't fully understand. Witness accounts painted a picture of nature's indifference to human hopes and dreams. The ocean that Lani had loved, that she believed loved her back, had revealed its true nature, a wilderness where humans were simply another potential food source, where decades of respect and understanding meant nothing to a hungry predator operating on instinct. The final moments were mercifully quick. After the third strike, Lani lost consciousness from massive blood loss and trauma. The woman who could hold her breath for 4 minutes, who had surfed pipelines since childhood, who had touched the lives of thousands through her joyful approach to life, was gone in less than 90 seconds. Her last words, "John," and "help," would echo in the nightmares of those who heard them. As Kona disappeared into the depths, her tracking tag recording her steady movement toward deeper waters, she left behind a scene of devastation. The ocean surface, stained red in a 100-foot radius, held fragments of surfboard, shredded neoprene, and the horrified survivors who had witnessed nature's most primal act. The perfect morning at Pipeline had become a killing field, the dream session transformed into unsurvivable nightmare. The attack was over, but the horror was just beginning. As Marcus Chen and John Florence struggled to recover what remained of Lani Brooks, sirens wailed in the distance. The first responders were about to face a scene that would challenge even their professional composure. And somewhere in the deep blue Pacific, a tiger shark swam on, carrying in her belly the remains of a young woman whose only crime had been loving the ocean too much. At 6:47 a.m., the first 911 call came through to Honolulu Emergency Services. Marcus Chin, still in the water, screamed into his waterproof phone, "There's been a shark attack. North Shore Pipeline. A surfer, she's been pulled under. God, there's so much blood in the water." The dispatcher, Keiko Tanaka, a 15-year veteran, later said it was the most distressing call she'd ever received. Chen's voice, breaking with panic and exhaustion, painted a vivid picture of chaos and tragedy. Within 90 seconds, The emergency response system activated. Ocean safety lifeguards from Oahu Beach Park were already sprinting toward their jet skis, having witnessed the commotion from their tower. The first responder in the water was Lieutenant Nathan Alana, a 20-year veteran of North Shore ocean safety. He reached the impact zone at 6:49 a.m., navigating through hysterical surfers and blood-stained water to assess the situation. "I've seen shark attacks before," Alana would later testify, "but nothing like this." The water was red for 50 yards in every direction. Surfers were diving frantically, searching. Marcus Chen was holding remains, trying to keep them afloat. John Florence was underwater, still searching. Everyone was in shock, screaming, crying. The scene that greeted Alana was one of barely controlled chaos. 7 surfers were in the immediate area, some diving repeatedly despite the obvious danger of the shark potentially returning, others floating in stunned silence. Morrison had arrived on a rescue board and was diving desperately, coming up gasping and screaming Lani's name. Each surfacing revealed more of the horror, the water so thick with blood that visibility was reduced to inches. Alana made the difficult decision to prioritize the living over recovery efforts. Using his jet ski's PA system, he commanded all surfers to exit the water immediately. I had to scream at them repeatedly. They didn't want to leave. Marcus Chen was hypothermic from diving so much, his lips were blue, but he kept going back down. I finally had to physically pull him onto the sled. The first ambulance arrived at 6:52 a.m., followed quickly by Honolulu Police Department units and additional paramedics. The parking lot at Oahu Beach Park became a staging area for what was rapidly evolving from a rescue to a recovery operation. Paramedic Captain Lisa Kawamoto took charge of medical operations, immediately recognizing that the surviving surfers were in various states of shock and hypothermia from their frantic diving efforts. Meanwhile, Hawaii Division of Conservation and Resources Enforcement, DOCARE, Officer Steve Pacheco arrived to address the ongoing shark threat. My first priority was clearing the water completely. We had surfers at breaks all along the North Shore who needed to be warned. The shark was still out there, possibly still in feeding mode. Using both jet skis and a helicopter that arrived at 7:05 a.m., officers began sweeping the coastline, using loudspeakers to order everyone out of the water from Haliwa to Sunset Beach. The recovery of Lani's remains presented unprecedented challenges. What Marcus Chen and John Florence had managed to bring to the surface was transferred to the jet ski sled with as much dignity as possible under the circumstances. Alana later described it as the hardest thing he'd ever had to do in his career. We tried to shield what we were doing from the beach, where crowds were gathering. But everyone knew. You could hear people screaming and crying from shore. Dr. Jennifer Park, the first emergency physician to arrive on scene, faced an unusual situation. While there was no victim to treat, multiple survivors were showing signs of severe psychological trauma. Marcus Chen was in complete shock, kept saying, "I couldn't save her, I couldn't reach her." John Florence was hypothermic and showing signs of secondary drowning from his repeated deep dives. Jake Morrison had to be physically restrained from returning to the water. The helicopter search, conducted by Honolulu Fire Department's Air 1 unit, began systematic passes over the attack site. At 7:10 a.m., using sophisticated cameras, they searched for any sign of additional remains or the shark itself. Pilot Captain Ray Oda reported, "The blood slick was visible from 500 feet up, spreading northwest with the current. Could see the shark's probable path, a straight line heading toward deeper water. No sign of the animal or additional evidence." Back on the beach, a secondary crisis was developing. News of the attack had spread instantly through social media, and hundreds of people were arriving, some to help, many simply to gawk. Officer Pacheco had to establish a perimeter, pushing crowds back to allow emergency workers space to operate. People were live streaming, taking photos. We had to threaten arrest to get some of them to back off. It was disgusting. This young woman had just died. and people were treating it like entertainment. The medical examiner's van arrived at 7:25 a.m., marking the official transition from rescue to recovery. Dr. Michael Kusaka, chief medical examiner for Honolulu County, took custody of the remains with a small ceremony of respect, covering everything with a traditional Hawaiian kapa cloth that someone had brought from their car. The sight of the small, covered form being transferred to the van broke the composure of even veteran first responders. Attention now turned to the traumatized survivors. Marcus Chen was showing signs of severe shock and mild hypothermia. Paramedics started 4 fluids and wrapped him in thermal blankets. He kept repeating details of the attack, his mind stuck in a loop of trauma. "She fought so hard," he said over and over. "She never gave up. I tried to reach her. I was so close. Why didn't the shark take me instead?" John Florence, despite his own hypothermia, initially refused treatment, insisting he needed to call Lani's parents. Officer Alana had to gently explain that police would handle family notification. The weight of this reality. Somewhere, Lani's parents were about to receive the worst news of their lives, cast a deeper pall over the scene. The search for additional remains continued until 10:30 a.m. 5 boats from various agencies, 2 helicopters, and dozens of divers covered a 3-mile radius from the attack site. The strong current had dispersed most evidence, and the depth of the water where Kona had made her final descent made diving operations impossible. The search was called off with the understanding that the ocean had claimed what it would keep. Throughout the emergency response, the question of the shark's location remained paramount. DoCare officers worked with the University of Hawaii's shark research team to access Kona's tracking data. At 8:15 a.m., they confirmed the shark had moved approximately 4 miles offshore into her typical deepwater habitat. This information allowed authorities to make decisions about beach closures and public safety. The final act of the immediate response was the most difficult: family notification. Honolulu Police Chaplain David Kaleo and Detective Sarah Wong arrived at the Brooks family home at 8:30 a.m. Kai Brooks answered the door in board shorts, clearly preparing for his own morning surf session. The moment he saw the officers' faces, he knew. His collapse was audible from the street, a father's primal grief that needed no words. By 11 a.m., the immediate emergency response was complete. The beaches remained closed, yellow tape marked. The area where Lani had entered the water for the last time, and counselors had been dispatched to work with traumatized witnesses. The physical emergency was over, but the emotional and community trauma was just beginning. First responders, many of whom knew Lani personally, gathered for a brief debrief where tears flowed freely. Lieutenant Alana summed up the feeling. "In 20 years of ocean rescue, I've never felt so helpless. We train for everything, but how do you train for losing one of our own to the ocean we all love?" The emergency response to Lani Brooks's death would be studied and analyzed for years to come, becoming a textbook case for shark attack protocols. But for those who lived through it, it would always be remembered as the morning paradise turned to horror when all their training and equipment couldn't save a young woman from an ancient predator in its own domain. The medical examiner's preliminary report, released 72 hours after the attack, painted a clinical picture of nature's brutality. Dr. Michael Kusaka's findings confirmed what witnesses already knew: Lani Brooks had suffered injuries incompatible with life within seconds of the first strike. The cause of death was listed as massive trauma, resulting from shark attack, with terminal blood loss and catastrophic organ damage. The report noted that unconsciousness would have occurred within 60 to 90 seconds due to blood loss, a small mercy in an otherwise merciless event. At Queen's Medical Center in Honolulu, the survivors of the CK were dealing with their own trauma. Marcus Chen remained hospitalized for 48 hours, suffering from severe exhaustion, hypothermia, and what doctors diagnosed as acute stress disorder. He experienced vivid flashbacks, unable to close his eyes without seeing Lani's face underwater, her hand reaching toward him. Psychiatrist Dr. Alan Watanabe prescribed sedatives and began immediate trauma counseling, warning Chen's family that recovery would be a long process. The animal that had caused such devastation became the subject of intense scrutiny. Within hours of the attack, Kona's tracking data was analyzed by every shark expert in Hawaii. The data revealed she had remained in the area for approximately 40 minutes after the attack before moving to deeper waters. By noon on October 12, she was recorded at a depth of 600 feet, resuming normal swimming patterns. The clinical nature of the data, simple GPS coordinates and depth readings, stood in stark contrast to the human tragedy it represented. The decision regarding Kona's fate sparked immediate controversy. Hawaii law was clear: sharks involved in fatal attacks were typically hunted and killed. But Kona's satellite tag made her valuable to research, and she had moved far from shore into waters where capture would be nearly impossible. Dr. Carl Meyer argued against a hunt. Killing this shark won't bring Lani back and won't make the ocean safer. Tiger sharks are territorial. Remove one, and another takes its place. We need to understand why this happened, not seek revenge on an animal following its instincts. The Brooks family, devastated by grief, initially wanted the shark killed. Kai Brooks, speaking through tears at a press conference, said, "That monster took my baby girl. How can they let it keep swimming out there?" But as days passed and the initial shock faded, the family's position evolved. Maria Brooks, drawing on her Hawaiian cultural background, spoke of the complex relationship between her people and the ocean. The sea gives and takes. We cannot hate the shark any more than we can hate the wave that holds you down. But we can learn from this tragedy. The official investigation, conducted jointly by DoCare and the Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology, revealed troubling patterns. Analysis of ocean conditions showed that water temperatures in October 2023 were the highest on record for the month. Bait fish populations near shore had exploded due to unusual current patterns, creating what Dr. Meyer called a perfect storm of conditions for predator-prey interactions in the surf zone. The investigation concluded that, while the attack was unprovoked, multiple environmental factors had significantly increased the risk. The community response was overwhelming. Within hours of the attack, a memorial began growing at Pipeline. Flowers, leis, photographs, and handwritten notes covering the fence where Lani used to hang her towel. Surfers from around the world sent tributes. Kelly Slater posted a heartfelt Instagram message. Lani represented everything beautiful about surfing: joy, courage, and pure aloha. The ocean is less bright without her smile. His post received over 1 million likes and thousands of comments from people sharing their own memories of Lani. A paddle-out memorial was organized for October 19th, 1 week after the attack. Despite lingering fears about sharks, over 500 surfers gathered at Pipeline at sunset. They formed a massive circle in the water, holding hands as Kai Brooks, barely able to speak through his grief, shared stories of his daughter. Flowers were scattered on the water as the sun dipped below the horizon, and many reported seeing a pod of dolphins pass by the ceremony, a moment that some interpreted as Lani's spirit saying goodbye. The legal ramifications began almost immediately. The Brooks family, through attorney David Chin, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the state of Hawaii, alleging that authorities had failed to act on known shark aggregation data and should have closed the beaches. The suit sought damages and demanded new protocols for shark monitoring and beach closures. The state argued that surfing, especially at dawn, was an inherently risky activity that Lani had chosen to pursue despite known dangers. Changes in policy came swiftly. Within 2 weeks of the attack, the Hawaii Department of Land and Natural Resources implemented new emergency protocols. These included mandatory beach closures when multiple large sharks were detected near popular surf breaks, increased funding for shark monitoring technology, and a public alert system that would send warnings to registered ocean users when sharks were tracked in specific areas. The system, officially named the Ocean Guardian Alert Network, was informally known as Lani's Law. the surfing community struggled with the aftermath. Many professional surfers admitted to experiencing new fears in the water. Carissa Moore, 5-time world champion, spoke candidly about the impact. Every time I paddle out now, especially at dawn, I think of Lani. We all knew there were risks, but we felt invincible. Her death shattered that illusion. I've started surfing with a shark deterrent device, something I never thought I'd do. Local surf schools reported a 40% drop in bookings in the month following the attack. Several instructors quit, altogether unable to reconcile their love of the ocean with the trauma of what had happened. The economic impact rippled through the North Shore community. Surf shops, photographers, and tourism operators all felt the effects of people's new fear of the water. 6 weeks after the attack, a permanent memorial was unveiled at Oahu Beach Park. A bronze plaque embedded in lava rock red, in memory of Lani Brooks, 1999 to 2023, daughter of the sea, forever charging. The dedication ceremony drew hundreds, including professional surfers, state officials, and members of the Hawaiian sovereignty movement who performed traditional protocols to honor both Lani and the ocean. The tragedy also sparked a surge in shark research funding. The National Science Foundation approved a $2.5 million grant to study tiger shark behavior in Hawaiian waters, with specific focus on human-shark interactions. Dr. Meyer, leading the research, stated, "Lani's death cannot be in vain. If we can understand what drives these rare but devastating attacks, perhaps we can prevent future tragedies while still preserving these important apex predators." For the Brooks family, the aftermath was a daily struggle. Kai Brooks couldn't bring himself to enter the ocean for 3 months, the longest he'd been out of the water since childhood. When he finally paddled out at a secluded spot, he broke down crying, feeling both connection to and betrayal by the sea that had defined his life. Maria Brooks threw herself into expanding her surf school, creating the Lani Brooks Memorial Scholarship to provide free lessons to underprivileged children, saying, Lani would want kids to love the ocean, not fear it. Keone Brooks, Lani's younger brother, channeled his grief into activism. He began speaking at schools about ocean safety, showing videos of his sister surfing while explaining both the joy and risks of ocean sports. She died doing what she loved, he would tell students, but she would have chosen to live if she'd recognized the danger. That's why we need to be smart about when and where we surf. The psychological impact extended far beyond the immediate family. Marcus Chun continued therapy for PTSD, suffering nightmares and panic attacks whenever he heard ocean sounds. He attempted to return to surfing for months after the attack but experienced a panic attack in the lineup and had to be helped to shore. John Florence took a 3-month break from competitive surfing, later admitting he considered retirement. "Every time I duck dive I see her face," he confessed in a rare interview. "The ocean doesn't feel safe anymore." 1 year after the attack, Kona's tracking tag stopped transmitting, its battery life expired. Her last recorded position was 200 miles southwest of Oahu, in deep Pacific waters where few humans venture. Whether she still lives, continuing her ancient patterns of hunting and migration, is unknown. But her legacy, the grief she caused, the changes she sparked, the lives she altered, continues to ripple through Hawaii's ocean communities. The aftermath of Lani Brooks's death revealed hard truths about humanity's relationship with the ocean. Despite our technology, knowledge, and love for the sea, we remain visitors in an alien world where we are neither apex predator nor specially protected. The ocean that gives so much joy, sustenance, spiritual connection, can take it all away in seconds, indifferent to our dreams, our loves, or our desperate attempts to find meaning in tragedy. Dr. Carl Meyer, recognized as one of the world's leading tiger shark researchers with over 25 years of experience studying these apex predators, has analyzed hundreds of shark attacks throughout his career. When he reviewed the Lani Brooks case, he identified several factors that made this attack particularly severe. Tiger sharks are opportunistic feeders with the most varied diet of any shark species, Dr. Meyer explains. They've been found with everything from sea turtles to license plates in their stomachs. But attacks of this severity, with multiple strikes and such catastrophic damage, are extremely rare. In my analysis, this represented a perfect storm of environmental, behavioral, and circumstantial factors. The attack pattern analysis revealed disturbing details about Kona's behavior. Unlike most tiger shark attacks in Hawaii, which typically involve a single exploratory bite before the shark retreats, Kona exhibited what experts term persistent, predatory behavior. She struck 3 times over a period of 45 seconds, adjusting her attack strategy based on the victim's resistance. This suggested either extreme hunger, territorial aggression, or a combination of factors that overrode the shark's typical wariness of humans. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a comparative marine biologist from Stanford University who specializes in predator-prey dynamics, reviewed video footage and witness accounts. The initial strike showed classic tiger-shark ambush behavior, a vertical rush from below targeting the victim's silhouette against the surface light. But what happened next was unusual. Sharks, upon encountering resistance or realizing the prey isn't their typical food, will abandon the attack. Kona's persistence suggests she had committed to the kill, possibly due to nutritional stress or competitive pressure from other predators. Medical examiner Dr. Michael Kusaka provided crucial insights into the biomechanics of the attack. The injury patterns tell a story of massive force applied with surgical precision. Tiger sharks have heterodont dentition, different teeth for different functions. The front teeth are designed for gripping, while the lateral teeth are for cutting. The wounds showed clear evidence of both, indicating the shark was using its full predatory toolkit. The bite force, estimated at over 3,000 psi based on wound measurements, would have caused immediate catastrophic damage to blood vessels and organs. The survival factors analysis painted a grim picture. Dr. Rachel Thompson, a trauma surgeon who reviewed the case, explained why survival was impossible. In shark attacks, the critical factors are location of wounds, time to medical intervention, and blood loss rate. Ms. Brooks suffered injuries to major arteries in multiple locations. Even if she had been attacked in a hospital parking lot, the outcome would likely have been the same. The human body simply cannot compensate for that level of trauma and blood loss. Prevention expert Captain Mike Nakamura, a 30-year veteran of ocean safety with specialized training in shark behavior, emphasized the warning signs that were present. We had elevated water temperatures, massive baitfish schools, multiple shark sightings, and recent aggressive behavior reports. Any one of these factors should prompt increased caution. Combined, they created conditions where entering the water at dawn, peak shark feeding time, represented an extreme risk. The tragedy is that all this information was available, but it wasn't effectively communicated to ocean users. Dr. Lisa Chen, a behavioral psychologist who studies risk assessment in extreme sports, explained why experienced ocean users like Lani often ignore danger signs. There's a phenomenon called expert syndrome where high-level practitioners become blind to risks that would be obvious to others. They've successfully navigated dangerous situations so many times that they develop an illusion of control. Ms. Brooks had surfed with sharks present hundreds of times without incident. Each safe session reinforced her belief that she could accurately assess and manage the risk. Legal expert Professor James Watanabe from the University of Hawaii Law School discussed the complex liability issues. This case highlights the intersection of personal responsibility, governmental duty to warn, and the inherent risks of ocean activities. Hawaii law recognizes the inherent risk doctrine for ocean sports, but there's also an obligation for authorities to warn of known unusual dangers. The presence of aggregated satellite tracking data showing multiple large sharks in the area could be construed as creating a duty to warn or close beaches. The comparative analysis with other fatal shark attacks revealed important patterns. Dr. George Burgess, former director of the International Shark Attack File, noted, "When we compare this to other fatal tiger shark attacks globally, several factors stand out. The size of the shark, 14 feet, puts it in the 95th percentile for dangerous size. Day, location relative to deep water, and victim isolation all align with highest risk scenarios. What's unusual is the shark's persistence and the severity of trauma inflicted." Marine ecosystem expert Dr. Julia Roberts from NOAA examined the broader environmental context. October 2023 showed unprecedented ocean conditions off Oahu. Water temperatures were 3.5 degrees above historical averages, creating a cascade of ecological effects. Prey fish spawned earlier and in different locations, disrupting established predator feeding patterns. We documented tiger sharks in shallow water during daylight hours at rates 400% above normal. Climate change isn't just about temperature, it's about disrupting millions of years of evolved behaviors. The expert consensus on prevention strategies was clear but sobering. Dr. Meyer summarized, "There's no such thing as shark-proof ocean swimming, but we can dramatically reduce risk. Never surf alone, especially at dawn or dusk. Exit the water immediately when sharks are sighted or if baitfish schools are present. Pay attention to wildlife behavior. Seabirds and dolphins suddenly leave an area, follow their lead. Most importantly, respect that every ocean entry carries risk regardless of experience level." Psychological trauma expert Dr. Amanda Foster analyzed the lasting impact on witnesses and the community. What we see in cases like this is collective trauma. Every surfer who was in the water that day, everyone who knew Lani, even those who only heard about it, they all carry psychological wounds. The randomness and violence shatter our illusion of safety in familiar environments. Many develop hypervigilance in the water, panic responses to shadows or unexpected movements, and intrusive thoughts about their own mortality. Technology expert Dr. Kevin Liu discussed the limitations of current shark deterrent systems. "We tested every commercially available shark deterrent in conditions simulating this attack. While some showed promise in making sharks hesitate or approach more cautiously, none would have prevented a determined predator of this size attacking at the speed. The magnetic and electrical devices work on the shark's sensory systems, but a hungry, aggressive shark can override these discomforts. Personal deterrents should be viewed as risk reduction tools, not guarantees of safety." The analysis of shark behavior patterns revealed a troubling trend. Dr. Martinez explained, "We're seeing behavioral adaptation in tiger sharks around populated areas. They're learning that human activity often means food opportunity, whether from fishing, spearfishing, or simply the concentration of prey species around popular beaches. Habituation process makes attacks more likely over time, not less. It's similar to bears around campgrounds. Familiarity breeds danger, not safety." Perhaps most importantly, the experts agreed that Lani Brooks did nothing wrong from a technical standpoint. She was an experienced ocean user who understood standard safety protocols. Dr. Meyer emphasized this point. "It's crucial that we don't blame the victim. Ms. Brooks followed generally accepted practices for surfers in Hawaii. She entered at a known surf break during daylight hours with other people present. The idea that she should have anticipated and avoided this attack ignores the reality that thousands of surfers enter these same waters daily without incident. Was a statistical anomaly, tragic, but not predictable at the individual level. The expert analysis ultimately painted a picture of an unavoidable tragedy at the intersection of human ambition and natural predation. Despite all our knowledge, technology, and experience, the ocean remains a wilderness where humans are not the apex species. The death of Lani Brooks serves as a stark reminder that when we enter the sea, we accept risks that no amount of expertise can eliminate. The expert's role is not to provide false comfort, but to help us understand and minimize these risks while acknowledging that the ocean's wild nature is both its greatest attraction and its ultimate danger. Lani Brooks's tragedy teaches us that the ocean, for all its beauty and the joy it brings to millions, remains a wilderness, where humans are merely visitors, never truly masters. Lani embodied everything admirable about surfing culture: passion, courage, respect for nature, and an infectious love of life. She trained hard, respected local customs, gave back to her community, and approached the ocean with both skill and reverence. But her fatal mistake was believing that this relationship with the sea offered her special protection, that her love for the ocean would somehow be reciprocated by the ancient predators that patrol its depths. The prevention lessons from this tragedy are written in blood and tears, each one representing a potential life saved if heeded. First and foremost, never surf alone during dawn or dusk hours when sharks are most active. The data is unequivocal. 68% of fatal shark attacks in Hawaii have occurred during these crepuscular periods when sharks' natural hunting instincts are heightened. The few minutes of uncrowded waves are never worth the exponentially increased. When Lani paddled out at 6:15 a.m., she entered the ocean at the precise time when predators transition from deepwater hunting to shallow water ambush strategies. Second, treat unusual ocean conditions as nature's warning system. When water temperatures spike, when baitfish school in unusual numbers or locations, when marine mammals flee an area suddenly, these are not coincidences but environmental signals that the normal balance has shifted. The morning of October 12th presented multiple red flags: spinner dolphins fleeing at high speed, massive baitfish schools, and water temperatures far above normal. Each factor alone might be dismissible, but combined they created what experts now recognize as extreme danger conditions. Third, understand that shark behavior is changing in response to environmental pressures. Climate change isn't just about rising sea levels or coral bleaching. It's fundamentally altering predator-prey relationships that have existed for millions of years. Sharks are being forced into new hunting patterns, competing for resources in smaller areas, and encountering humans in situations where both species are outside their comfort zones. The old rules about shark behavior, passed down through generations of ocean users, may no longer apply in our rapidly changing seas. Lani's legacy extends far beyond the circumstances of her death. In the months following the tragedy, the Lani Brooks Ocean Safety Foundation was established by her family, raising over $500,000 in its first year. The foundation provides free ocean safety education to schools across Hawaii, has distributed 1,000 shark deterrent devices to young surfers who couldn't otherwise afford them, and funds research into non-lethal shark warning systems. Her father Kai, speaking at the foundation's launch, said through tears, Lani would hate that her death made people afraid of the ocean, but she would love that it might save lives. The foundation's most impactful program has been the Lani's Light initiative, solar-powered emergency beacons, installed at remote surf breaks that can instantly alert emergency services and warn other ocean users of danger. 23 beacons were installed in the first year, and they've already been credited with saving 4 lives, not from shark attacks, but from medical emergencies and severe injuries where rapid response made the difference. Beacon bears Lani's image and the words, "Love the ocean, respect its power." Perhaps most remarkably, Lani's mother Maria transformed her grief into action by expanding her surf school curriculum to include mandatory ocean safety modules. Every student, regardless of skill level, now learns shark behavior patterns, emergency response protocols, and what she calls humble ocean practice, the acknowledgement that no amount of skill or experience makes you safe from nature's raw power. The program has been adopted by surf schools across Hawaii and internationally, potentially reaching thousands of young ocean enthusiasts with life-saving knowledge. The policy changes implemented after Lani's death represent a fundamental shift in how Hawaii approaches ocean safety. The Ocean Guardian Alert Network, informally known as Lani's Law, now tracks 183 tagged sharks in real time, sending automatic alerts to registered users when large sharks are detected near popular beaches. In its first year of operation, the system triggered 47 beach evacuations, each one potentially preventing another tragedy. Balsam criticized the system for creating unnecessary fear. The overwhelming response from the ocean community has been gratitude for actionable information that allows informed decision-making. The scientific community has also rallied around preventing future tragedies. The Lani Brooks Memorial Research Grant, funded jointly by the National Science Foundation and private donors, supports cutting-edge research into shark behavior modification and deterrent technologies. Early results are promising. Researchers have developed a new acoustic warning system that causes sharks to change direction at distances up to 100 meters, potentially creating safe zones around popular beaches without harming marine life. For the survivors and witnesses of that terrible morning, healing has been a long and difficult journey. Marcusjan, after months of therapy, eventually returned to the ocean but now dedicates his time to teaching ocean safety rather than pursuing professional surfing. He speaks candidly about his PTSD, hoping to remove stigma around seeking mental health support after traumatic incidents. Lani fought physically against the shark, he says, and I have to fight mentally against what I saw. Both battles are real, and both require courage. John Florence used his platform as a world champion surfer to advocate for ocean safety, producing a documentary called Respect and Remember that featured interviews with shark attack survivors, marine biologists, and safety experts. The film, dedicated to Lani, has been viewed over 10 million times and is now required viewing in many surf schools. Florence's message is clear: we can love the ocean and still acknowledge its dangers. Respecting the sea means accepting that we're guests in a wild place where anything can happen. The broader surfing community has undergone a cultural shift, where once it was considered uncool or cowardly to express fear about sharks, open discussions about ocean risks are now common. Professional surfers routinely withdraw from competitions when shark activity is elevated, a decision that would have been career suicide before Lani's death but is now seen as prudent. The phrase, "no wave is worth your life," once reserved for big wave surfing, has taken on new meaning in any conditions where predators are present. For those who continue to enter the ocean, and millions still do, Lani's story serves as both warning and inspiration. Her joy in surfing, her connection to the sea, her dedication to sharing the stoke with others, these positive aspects of ocean culture remain valid and valuable. But they must be balanced with humility, caution, and respect for the reality that we are not designed for the aquatic environment. Every duck dive, every paddle out, every moment of bliss riding a wave exists in tension with the knowledge that we are borrowing time in a realm where we don't belong. The ultimate lesson from Lani Brooks's story may be about the nature of love itself. She loved the ocean with every fiber of her being, but that love was ultimately unrequited. The sea doesn't love us back, it simply exists, vast and indifferent, following rhythms and rules older than complex life itself. Tiger sharks don't hate humans any more than they love them. We are simply objects in their environment to be investigated, avoided, or occasionally consumed. Isn't cruel or evil, it's nature in its purest form. As we remember Lani Brooks, her radiant smile, her charging spirit, her aloha for everyone she met, we must also remember the 10 seconds that ended her life. Not to sensationalize or profit from tragedy, but to honor her memory by learning from her death. Every surfer who checks the Shark Alert app before paddling out, every parent who enrolls their child in ocean safety classes, every beachgoer who heeds warnings and respects closures, they all carry forward Lani's legacy. The ocean continues to call to us, as it has throughout human history. Its waves still offer the same thrills, the same connection to something greater than ourselves, the same temporary escape from the complexities of land-based life. But now, thanks to Lani's sacrifice, we answer that call with greater wisdom. We understand that every sunrise session carries risk, that every perfect wave could be our last, that the sea's beauty and danger are inseparable aspects of its nature. If you've been moved by Lani's story, share it with every ocean lover you know. Subscribe to this channel for more stories that reveal the complex relationship between humans and nature's apex predators. But more importantly, take action. Register for shark alerts in your area, invest in safety equipment, never surf alone at dawn or dusk, and always remember that no amount of experience makes you immune to the ocean's power. The sea will always be there, waiting for us with its waves and wonders, and its sharks. How we choose to engage with it, armed with knowledge and respect rather than ignorance and arrogance, will determine whether we become another tragic statistic or live to surf another day. Remember Lani Brooks not just for how she died, but for how she lived, with passion, purpose, and pure stoke. Her memory by being smarter than she was able to be on that fateful morning. The ocean took one of its brightest lights on October 12, 2023, but from that darkness has come illumination that may save countless others. In the end, that's the only meaning we can wrest from the meaningless violence of nature, to learn, to adapt, and to protect those who come after us from suffering the same fate. Lani Brooks was 24 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her. She died doing what she loved, but she would rather have lived to surf another day. Let her story be your warning, her joy be your inspiration, and her tragedy be the reminder you need every time you zip up your wetsuit and paddle toward the horizon. The ocean is magnificent, but it is not your friend. Respect it accordingly.